There it is. This is Witty doing a quick map review for Echo Isles 2.0. SaveOrcas wanted me to take a quick look at the map, so we're going to go and do that. This is a diagram, a demonstration of the map and its changes. I'm going to look into it in the editor though in a moment, but this is just to give you a little preview. Now, this is the map as it stands, but to understand it a little bit better, we're just going to go back to the original quickly, so you can sort of get a visual before we go back into the new one. So you can see this version is a lot more open, at least in the middle area, because in order to make way for some new creek camps, the map had to be redesigned. So we'll take a look and see how it's been redesigned. Reforged. Okay, let's try that again, shall we? Launch editor. It is what it is, you know? What can you do? Alright, we should be back to Echo Isles 2.0 and then pull back, and here we go. So I'm going to do one change that's going to make this really clear to see. Scenario, map description, loading screen, prefs, time of day, dawn. Okay, so now you don't have to worry about that darkness of the night. So you've got your original player spots, those haven't changed. You've even got the marketplace, which I don't think has actually changed. This is like an optical illusion, because somehow they've managed to put in a gold mine at the top here and make it look like this is so much more space. But I looked between this map and the other map, and I don't think the position of the gold mines, the marketplace, has actually changed, at least as far as I could tell. So there was actually a fair bit of spare space here. Originally, this was your path. It was a small narrow path towards the enemy base, and this was all water. So first up, we've got a big old gold mine, which is obviously going to solve that issue that Echo Isles tends to have, where players will be stuck in this sort of stalemate situation where there's no incentive to attack one another because you're effectively attacking into one base. But having this asymmetrical gold mine here, this extra gold mine, means that there's something else for the players to fight over. And if one player has it, you certainly don't want him to have it, because if you've got a gold mine, your opponent's got a gold mine, you're on even Steven. But this case is going to be a 2-to-1, so someone's going to want this. And the item drop is actually pathetic, but I think that's okay. I mean, level 3 permanent isn't necessarily pathetic. It could be like claws of attack plus 9 or something. Yeah. Let's go here. Those are the items, so you can still get something pretty useful, actually, to be fair. But the main thing you're really getting from this is actually just the gold mine itself. So that's the real enticement. I'm not sure if Night Elf are going to be able to like do an Ancient of War here, creep this, and then come up and do that. Some of that Night Elf BS, but I guess the players are going to have another thing to keep an eye on. It's an interesting addition, and I like to see how it plays out. I mean, most of the changes on this map are really a case of just seeing how they play out, because the pros are going to know much better than I do. What are you saying, Igneous? Why are you distracting me with such a weird question? He literally asked this: do you check for Welshmen under the bed before going to sleep? Like, I checked my chat just now, just to sort of think, oh, have they got any insights, any, you know, good criticisms about the map or anything like that? No, that's what I get. Brilliant. So let's come back. This is the same. This is the same. This is the same, but the trees have been chopped down a little bit. And we've got the same gold mine. Now, the creeps on this side are technically the same, except they would have been here. So this is an interesting development to pull them over here, which makes more space openly to do this creek camp here, because these turtles actually used to be over here. And you could get like stuck if you get creep jacked from behind. But now you can actually go over here. So this is open. This was closed before. Now it's open. So you could go straight from the mercenary camp down to here if he was ballsy enough to do such a thing. So there's alternatives to run away from your opponent or to sort of kite them. I think you can't be manipulated too much, because if, say for example, you're defending this position, your opponent's being aggressive, and you've got the upper hand for whatever case, and they're stuck here, they're not going to very easily be able to escape from this situation. So they will still get punished if you catch them. But it's still an opportunity. And this seems to be widened and sort of more narrow and rectangular-ish. I think there was more sort of like a clutter tree-wise back and forth, which I'm not so sure about that. I don't know if there should be like a few trees here. Say for example you're being chased and it's just an opportunity, like if your footman's being chased or something like that, to sort of like narrowly follow the tree line and hope that you get that line of vision. Your opponent loses their vision, the line of vision, and then because if they're just sort of attacking and chasing the footman, they're not really concentrating on it. They just sent it to do that, and then you can like lose the unit. I think that would be kind of cool, but I don't know. Maybe that's a deliberate design decision, because otherwise it's very straight, so there's no real way to do that. If something is chasing you, they've got a very clear path. And then what you'll notice really is the map is just a lot more symmetrical, which I think is a good thing. It does lose some of the charms, because if you look at the old version of this map, it's really kind of bizarre how sort of different the left side is from the right side, but people still played it for that long. But this side, you can see you got these trees that have been added here. I mean, they were always on the right hand side, a bunch of sort of trees here, but there was never trees on the left hand side, which was weird. So now you've got this kind of like path to block and have choke points, but it's still pretty open. Like, units, they're going to still have a lot of space to move around. As you can see, Mount King only takes so much space. So I still think there's opportunities. It does get a little bit clustered. You could almost make this just a tiny bit smaller. Like more like this. I mean, this is just, again, whether this is criticism you want to take on board or not. It's just that ever bit smaller, for whatever reason. Like that kind of thing. But, I mean, it's a very tiny... If I'm criticizing that, then you know you've done fine. So, this is now more symmetrical in the middle. And this creek camp is new. It's a creek camp that I'm a little concerned with for Blade Master, for example. He can pop in, kill this. It's an old brute, though. And those aren't that easy to kill. They got 400 health. And meanwhile, he's going to be taking quite a lot of damage from the Gnoll Poacher and the Troll, whilst he's trying to get through 400 health. But I don't think it's that impossible with healing salves. So it's effectively another option for a Blade Master to pick up an item. It is only a level 1 item that drops from this creep camp though, which I think is the right move, because this should really just be a bonus. It's just another thing to creep. It's another thing to do. I think that's another thing that's good here, is it just gives the players a little bit more. I think the most interesting maps in Warcraft 3 are really the ones that have a lot of creeps. You might have 1 versus 1 games where you're actually not even, you know, creeping that much. It's just an all-out brawl. But it's always nice to have those options for when you get those points in the game where the players can't really attack one another, but they need something to do, rather than sit in their base. So maps like Twisted Meadows, for example, might be a little bit big and sort of like biased towards certain races because of how large it can be and exploitive, but at least there's still things to always be aiming to do, or a cool sort of like high-level creep camp you can pull off. I think this should be changed to stop Blade Masters from being able to sort of like ninja it, or Night Elf being able to do it so easily with Ancient of War. That's just a personal criticism. I'm a low level player though, so I don't know what the high level players would think about that. But it's always been annoying that it's kind of like a free camp for a Blade Master, because they can manipulate the trolls. They might have actually been changed. It looks like they're actually being pulled further back, so I don't think a Blade Master can do that anymore, because it looks like the ogres should be able to stop it. So maybe it has been. I mean, looking at it now, it looks like a lot of movements. So yeah, I think so. That's alright then. So what we really have is an extra creek camp here, a big gold mine which changes a lot, open space at the back here, and more symmetricality. So a switching of the trees positioning to sort of like allow for creeps to be there, but not sort of hinder or clump up other spots, like here for example. This is a good change. It's just, it flows with the map. So first impressions, it's actually really quite good. I think this is a lot of quality of life improvements for this map that has essentially been on the ladder for a long time, and I think it's become quite stale. Obviously you have to check in with the Back to Warcraft community. They do a lot of shoutcasting, they know these maps very well, and I think it's always a criticism on their side that perhaps Echo Isles might be a little bit stagnant. So I wonder what they think of the changes. I'm sure they're positive about it though. Remo's going to have to do some work because he normally does his little creep routes. The quickest way to level 3, for example, with a Death Knight and Skeleton creeping. But now you've got this extra creep camp, so is that going to be beneficial for the Death Knight to do? Little things like that, just a little extra addition like that could change quite a lot, potentially. But I like it. I think it's much better. I think one of the biggest sacrifices is essentially how open it is. It's still technically open, but to have this symmetricality and the additions of the creep camps and the repositioning, you've basically had to chuck in a few extra trees here and there. And maybe there's no massive open battleground other than the very middle of the map. But then, maybe that's a good thing. This looks really cushy, this spot. I think this is almost being changed. I think it is, yeah, they are basically symmetrical when you look at it, which is a good thing because I was going to say that right-hand side looked pretty damn good, actually, to defend from. But I can see the tree lines and everything is almost identical, which I think is the right thing. So, without rambling on too much more, I think this is a very good change. Not too many game-breaking changes. Any addition creep-wise are either quite low item level for what they give, and there's not too much extra, but it's just enough to give the players something else to work for. So, definitely positive about that. I did think this would be interesting to sort of like, because if you go to pathing and don't get rid of the rocks, it'd be nice if there was a way to get rid of the trees without getting rid of the rocks. Because you can see the rocks, the pink path in here blocks, so you can't basically go through this territory. And maybe you could sort of, I don't know, chop the trees up until this point, put a tower, but the tower won't be able to reach, so that can't really be too manipulated. But it's always interesting to think about stuff like that. And the same thing goes for here. Like, could you chop through the trees here and then put a tower here? But that tower wouldn't be able to reach over here. So effectively, it's not actually going to be that manipulative. But that's fine. You don't want it to be too abusive. But it's always cool to have things like that as a potential, because then when a player does it, it sort of really spices things up. But as long as it's not so good that it's reliable. I'm still salty about the Twisted Meadows having the red dragon removed and replaced with the golems, which are boring. Because I always thought that was the coolest thing. It's rare. People don't... It's not so overpowered that people did it every game. It was just a cool thing. Someone would pull the dragon with a gargoyle, for example, and bring a fiend into their base, web the dragon just before it... And it's bloody hard to do. And it can only be done in certain spots. Web the dragon... And then the dragon is now in that person's base, getting pissed off at them. But at the same time, it's kind of easy to kill that dragon, especially if people are still going riflemen or mass headhunters these days. Fiends, archers. You can actually kill that dragon and get a free item, effectively. So you could argue that your opponent's doing you a favor. So it wasn't... I like stuff like that. So anyway, I am rambling. Good map. I like the changes. Be interesting to see what happens and what the professionals think of it. GG. There you go.